Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is my third video in a series on Nuxt Ionic Framework, Capacitor, and building a mobile application. I posted a tweet here to see what I should do next, and it looks like Supabase won, so I'm going to integrate Supabase into my solution right now, and then we're going to deploy it to a mobile application to show how you can build mobile applications using Nuxt. We'll add the link below to the overall playlist that I have for the series so you can kind of follow along. I also have blog posts that go along with all the videos. So if you'd like to kind of read and follow along, you have that option also. Thanks for everyone who's subscribed. I've been picking up a couple of subscribers through this video series. And let's get to the code. And we're going to start off first with setting up Supabase. One interesting thing I just want to let people know between Supabase and Firebase is that after you're only allowed 2 free projects with Supabase. After your second project, you have to give a credit card. With Firebase, you can go a very long way without ever putting a credit card down. You can create tons of projects on it and use Firebase. So it's just if you're looking at these two and cost or a credit card is an issue, is just something that I think you should just keep in mind. Don't get me wrong, I love Supabase, I use it, but it was just something that I thought it's important for people to know. So basically, after your second project, you got to drop a credit card. Okay, so let's go to Supabase. I'm going to go through the Supabase installation and setup pretty quickly because there's a lot of videos on it, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it here because that's not really what I think people are here for. If you have any questions about the installation, I'm happy to answer them for you, but there's tons and tons of resources online to address this already. Okay, so I already have an account, so I'm going to sign in with GitHub. And let me kind of move myself out of the way a bit here. And you can see kind of stuff I have already. These are from my projects I did in the Bahamas, and this is most of my video stuff here. For those who wonder, future is written in code. All right, so let's create a new project, and we will create it in Fwick. And as you see here, I need to push to, because I could only have 2 free projects. So here I'm pushing. I have a pro tier, so I'm going into my pro tier, and we're just going to call this view video db1. I'm not really sure what my password is, so I'll put a new one in. All right, there we go. And I'll create a new project. This is going to take some time, I believe, to kind of spin up. And while that's spinning up, I will just kind of walk you through what we're going to do next. So as I said, oh, that was a little bit faster than I thought it was going to be. Oh, they're getting better. All right. The provisioning the endpoints, but we can kind of move along. So let's see. So a couple of things we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set up our project API keys. And so we're going to need this anonymous key, and then we're also going to need this URL down here. So the way we're going to solve it is, where should I put my head right now? I'll put myself down here for now. The way we're going to solve it is that you can use .env files inside of you can use .env files inside of what's it called? Nuxt. And so I'm just going to show you how you're going to use them because I don't want to share my .env file because I already have stuff in it. Clearly, these are not the real keys. Let me close this. These are not the real keys. But what you want to do in this .env file, where is it? Right here in the root of your project is to create the Supabase URL and the Supabase anonymous key. And if we go back over here to the page, this is the anonymous key, and this is the project URL that you want to kind of copy. And like I said, I'm adding them to my .env file. So that's what you want to do. So let's shrink this window down, and let's move this out of the way. All right, so we have our API keys and anonymous things done. A Okay, so we're going to leverage the contents of the .env file inside of our Nuxt config. So let's open up our Nuxt config. Let's switch back to our app here. And what we want to do is we want to add our runtime configuration block inside of here. So what you can do here is inside of this block, we can create another block called runtime config. And then we're going to create a public set of properties. And then here inside of these properties are where we are going to add our keys so that we can get access to them later. So here inside of public, here inside of public, we have our Supabase URL and our Supabase anonymous key, which there is a composable called use runtime. There's a composable called use runtime config that allow me to get access to my runtime configuration. And so that's what my objective is here, because we're going to need these keys inside the application to set the client up. And so the next step is, now that we have our keys in, the approach that I'm taking for getting Supabase set up, well, not even meant Supabase, let's just install it. So let me go down here. And I'll use my other terminal that I have open. Let's kill that. And we're just going to do an npm install of Supabase to get Supabase started up. All right, now we have Supabase installed. And the approach that I'm taking might be a little bit different than approach that other folks are going to take. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a plugin. So I'm going to go here inside of my plugin. I already created the Ionic plugin before to kind of instantiate Ionic when it started up. Ionic when the app starts up. I'm going to do the exact same thing with Supabase. So I'm going to create a file in here, and I'm going to call it sb.client.ts. This is the basic client code that you will get from, let's see if they go through it here. This is the basic client code that you will normally see to kind of set up a Supabase client inside of a JavaScript project. The only thing that's a little bit different here is a couple of things. You wouldn't have Nuxt app before. So normally what your code would be, let's just comment this out, this is what you would do. You get the client, you would get your anonymous keys and your Supabase URL from some other place. And then you would create your client. And I see I have some duplicate code here. I can just take these values and just drop them right in here. Take this value, drop it right in here. And I clean this code up a little bit so it's not too bad. And so this is a normal client code, but what we're going to do, since this is a plugin, we need to kind of wrap it with this define Nuxt plugin. So let's go back over here and let's wrap this with this define Nuxt plugin. So now we have our plugin. So this would be called its startup. And well, let's comment some of the specific stuff. So what you have is this use runtime config. This will get me access to this object, this runtime config object, where then I can pull off the public. Supabase URL and anonymous key. We'll see. And this code is not absolutely right either. Let's just do this. I could do some weird destructuring, but I'm just going to keep it simple. Let's just do config. So that gets us the config object. And then inside of here, we're just going to say config. You see we have public, and then the Supabase URL, and then we go here and do the exact same thing for the anonymous key. And that gives us the keys that we need to be included. And then this last thing that we're doing here is, so I have an instance of Nuxt app, and on Nuxt app, I have view app. And so what I'm going to do is, by saying provide Supabase, it's going to take this client and it'll allow me to basically inject this client anywhere inside of the view app that I need it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So So the next step is I'm going to go inside of here, inside of Composables, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it use Supabase client.ts. And so now I will have this composable, and once again, I'm just copying code, and I'll talk to you what I'm doing. Okay, so in this use composable, I'm using this type, so I can get the type of my client. And then what I'm doing here is I'm creating this, I'm going to export this function, use Supabase, and what that's going to do is it's going to take here, it's going to inject the client. Let's get that, so let's put this up together. So where's my, so here in my client, I provided this Supabase value so you can get access to the client. And then here, inside of my composable, I'm basically going to inject it. So this will basically get the value for me. And then I have my value, I check the value. If I don't have a value, then I know Supabase is an initialize and I throw an error. If I do have a value, then I return it. So this is how I get to Supabase client. All right, and so I think now we have our application set up properly. Let's see if we can kind of run it and just verify that my composable is working properly and I actually have the client. So what we can do is, well, first let's see if we can get our app functioning again. So let's run this. All right, so we have our app running, and now let's see if we can go inside of home. Where is home? Pages, our index view, and see how we have this use root router. Let's say const client, SB client equals use Supabase, use Supabase. And then let's console log it out. Console.log SB client. See if we have anything there. All right. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. My bad. So I'm on my home page, and you can see when I run it, I'm hitting my breakpoint, and we can, let me move this, change this a little bit to make it easier to read. Blow this up a bit, and you can see we are getting our Supabase client from our composable that we created. So let's delete this. So we know we have access to our Supabase client. So we know Supabase installed properly. We know we have our composable set up. We know our plugin is working. Now let's go back to Supabase and create a table. No, actually, first let's add some code in here for our login screen. Let's do that first. So what we're going to do is I have a bunch of code written already. I'll paste it in and kind of explain what's happening. So let's go to our pages. Let's add a new file. Login. So we're inside. So now we have our login view. And let's get some code in here for the screen. So we know to create pages in Ionic and to get that specific look and feel, you kind of need this. I'm just gonna take this. Actually, I'm just gonna take this whole about page to get us started. We copy about page, and let's go inside of login, and then let's paste that in here. And this is our login page. So we have our content section here. We're gonna just call this button sign in, and here we need to use some input. So let's clean that up a little bit. Let's see what we got on our page. I'm gonna just go to my login page here. It's all right. Let's go back. And so now we're on our login page. So let's get rid of this. And then we just have our sign in button. And with Ionic, Ionic gives you some nice tools to kind of lay this out. So we have an Ion item. And then inside of that item, we have Ion label. And we can call this email. And then underneath here, we have an Ion input. And it's type. We can say email. Placeholder. Email. Let's fix this. And then we're going to just add another one here called password. And then we need to import all these guys. So let's go down here and Ion item, Ion input, Ion label. Okay. So the mistake I made is I put both my inputs inside of there. What I want is I want a separate item for each one. So let's copy this, paste down here, and then let's just delete email from this one and password from this one, and see if that gets us closer to what we're looking for. And so that's what we get. Let's change my title. All right, and so we have our. I think I can move my labels up. Is that correct? Yeah, that's what I wanted, floating. There's different settings that you can set on here. The Ionic documentation will kind of show you what they are. Right now, it kind of has this floating thing, so when you click in it, it kind of hovers above. So that's what you're seeing with this kind of position floating. Let me change this to email. Okay, so now we have our input button, but we need a way to hold these credentials. So let's go down here inside of my code and let's put back in. So we know we need our SB client, and we know that comes from use Supabase. And so then down here, let's add some props. Let's call them local state, and then functions. And so down here for local state, we need const. Not stringify string. Okay, so this is our credentials, and then what we're going to do is up here, we're going to say v model credentials.email, and then down here, v model credentials.password. Okay, what happened? I'll need to close this. I'm not sure why these labels are still sitting red even though I've imported everything. And I'm gonna have to play with my prettier because I would like it to kind of do a little bit more wrapping because it's just got a lot of text across here. All right, so I've created my two fields. I have my email and my password. I have this model that keeps track of them here inside of credentials. And then I'm going to need a function to do a login when the user clicks the sign in button. So let's change this to sign in. I like to say do for specific action. So let's say do sign in. And then let's go down here under functions. Do sign in. This. So now that we have the Supabase login code in, you can see up here we are getting our credentials from this local state, which we took from the form up here, credentials email, credential password. We're destructuring it, and then we need to make our API call. This is directly from the Supabase documentation. I'll include links below on how to do the sign-in, and then we pass in our email and password. We get back our user session, we get back a user, and we get back an error. If an error happens, we're going to kind of leverage some of Ionic's UI components. In this one specifically, alert. So the whole idea is to start to make this look more like a mobile application. So let's kind of just drop that code in. Also include the link for how to use it. So I embedded the link right here. You can read the documentation, but basically what we're just trying to do is here. We want to just pop up an alert that says you have an error and error signing to Supabase, and then we'll take the message that we got back from the alert that happened. If there's no error, right, then clearly we probably want to save the user in the session. And so we will get back to that after we just kind of confirm that everything's working properly. All right, now let's go up here and see how am I doing my login. Let's clean this up a bit to kind of address the, I think it's prevent. Yeah, so we want to kind of prevent the normal behavior of this click. So we can come down here. Let's just give it a run and see what we get. So right now I have no fields entered. So let's see what happens if I just try and sign in. So I'm getting invalid login credentials. So I'm getting my error because there's no users in the database that can support this error.mail and whatever my password is. So it's kind of doing what we expected it to do at this point. So now let's get back to Supabase. Well, actually, let's quickly create a create account route also. So we are going to, let's do this. We have our sign in button. Let's add another create account button. And we're going to call this do create account. And actually we don't want to do that. We want to just route. So what we're going to do here is, I think we could use, I use this router link. I know I could use this in normal Ionic. Let's see if it works here. And we're just going to say router link / create account. And since there's no create account page, we're just going to copy all this and go to pages. And drop this in and then make some changes to it. So this would now be create account. We still want the email and password. And then we're going to change this to do create account. And obviously save, and then here we'll just call this cancel. And we will do something a little bit different here. We're gonna, on this, just go back. So put a function here, and then we're gonna just get our router, which I believe I can get like this, back, to send this back to wherever we came from. We'll cancel. So, and then let's go down here, and we're gonna change this to create account. And then we get our credentials, and instead of auth sign in, I think we need to say auth sign up. And auth sign up, email, password, phone. We're not passing a phone number, so just email and password. An error alert, error creating account in Supabase. Right? So that's how sign up should work. Let's see if we could. Let's see if we can get to these pages. So we're back on login. Looks like router link isn't working. So let me just make this. Let's go back to my login page, and let's just keep this simple and do this. Click prevent router push. I could probably use Nuxt link, but I think I'm good here. Router push, button push. No, I have to use my single quotes here. Single quote, double quote. Okay, now let's see. Create account. So now I'm on my create account page. Cancel takes me back to my login page. Sign in doesn't work because we don't have a user. Let's see if my create account works. I think I did everything to set up Supabase. Let's see. Did I put my prevent? Click prevent. When I click prevent is in there. I clicked do sign in. No, let me go back. Where's my create account? Do create account. Do create account. Do create account. If error. Let's do this. Else. Let's put our alert in here. And say and let's just say success account created in Supabase. All right, let's try this again. We're on this create account page. Let's do save. Account created in Supabase. So my account was created. Let's go into Supabase and see what this account was. And this was auth. Here's my account, my email that was created. Users. I have no idea what this password was set to. It's got this email verification thing turned on, which I don't want. So let's delete this user. And then let's go to my authentication settings. And let's do this. Enable email sign up. double confirm email changes, enable email comms. So basically, we don't want this. Let's turn this off. So I think I'm good. Let me try to create a user again and see what we get. Okay, so we're on our create account page. Let's change this. Save. So it says an account was created. Let's go back to my accounts. Go by users. There's my user. Let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see. So it looks like my user's all good. So now let's see if I can log in with this user. I think my user's all good, so now let's see if I can log in with this user. Let's kind of shrink this back down to a manageable size. Let's go back to let's cancel this. Let's cancel this. Here's my user. So now I gotta remember my password. And but I don't have any. I need to set an alert here also, so that we know when I have successfully logged in. So let's go back down here, and let's go back to my login view. Go down to the bottom here, and do the same thing. If error, then that, else. And here success. And we'll just say user logged in. Into Supabase, and then the last thing that we'll do is down here we'll console log out the user. Okay, so let's try and sign in. Oh, I got the password wrong again, so let's change the password. User logged in successfully, and then you can see down here it's kind of small. Let's gotta move this up a bit, but you can see that here's my user information. My user was authenticated, right? So we have the user logged in. Excuse me. We have our user authenticated. We have error message showing up. We can show how to create an account. What we still need to do is we kind of want to secure the pages, right? So we need a way to make sure that you can't get to, so like right now, I can still get to my home page, and theoretically we want this to be a private page which you can't access unless you're authenticated. And so what we'll do next is we will kind of show how to lock these pages down. It's going to be a little bit more interesting because, as you can see in Nuxt here, we don't have a router like we normally do in Vue, and with that we can kind of have some router hooks where we can check before you redirect to a new route. We can confirm that the user is authenticated. We can solve that with middleware in Nuxt, and so that's what we're going to do next. And so, well, first, before we do that, we need to have some sort of way to keep track of my user information. And I'm going to fall back on our good friend Composables again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new composable that I keep track of our authenticated user. And so let's kind of hop around and see what we got for that. So what I'm going to do up here is I'm just going to create a new composable, and we're going to call it use. Actually, you want to know what? I just realized I don't need to create a composable. There's an easier way to do this because I already have my Supabase client, and I can just ask my Supabase client if I have a user or not. So we can hop straight to just creating some middleware that can check to see if we actually have a user or not. And so let's go to my middleware, and we're going to call this, what did I call this? Let's call this auth.ts. And then, like I said, I already have this code, so let me just paste it in and kind of explain. So if we go to auth.ts, what we're going to do is, I don't know why this says use our state. This is really use Supabase, and then we're going to have our client. And then what I can do is we can check. So let's just change this, and we can say client auth, I believe is the current user. Let's see, session sign in, sign out, update user. Right? So that will return this a user. Inside browser context, user will return the user data if there's a logged in user, and it's actually a function. Let me do that. So if I don't have a user, then just go back to my login page. If I do have a user, just continue doing what I'm going to do. So that's what we have here in our middleware. And then the way you kind of add that is you go onto your page, and in your page here, you can tell it that when you want it to use middleware. So let's get rid of that. And then what we're going to do is we define this thing called page meta. And so I can come in here and on my page, I can define meta, and my meta is defined to my middleware, which is auth. And so if I don't have a user, it should redirect me. But the problem is I do have a user because I just logged in. So we're going to quickly, on our index page, we have this go to about page button. Let's just very quickly add a logout button. This isn't pretty, but Ion, we're going to call do sign out. And we'll do the same thing here. Let's do click event. And we're going to call this sign out. And so now we can sign out. And what we will do is we'll add our function down here. To sign out equals async. I'll put my async. ASYNC, my bad. So ASYNC. Then inside of here, we're going to, once again, sign out is a pretty straightforward Supabase client, Supabase API call. So we have up here our composables. So I need my client again. So const client equals use Supabase, and then that goes to my client. And then inside of here, I just say await client .auth .sign out, and that should sign the user out. And then what we'll also do here is we'll just go router dot, we'll just replace with login. Okay, so that should sign the user out. So let's go back over what I did. I have my middleware, which is my auth. And basically what my auth does is it gets a Supabase client. And if I don't have a user, then go to login. If I do have a user, just continue on. And then in my index view, I've added my sign out, which will sign me out by calling the Supabase sign out function. So let's just sign out. So I've signed out and I'm back on my login page. And now we can just check this by me trying to, let's see if I can access the index route again. Setup is not a function. That's interesting. Let me just recompile this again to make sure it's got everything. Okay, so here's some strangeness that I found. So first of all, I tested all this code before I started the video and it worked, but now I'm getting some weird behavior. I did update my version of Nuxt to RC3. I don't know if that matters, but also this is still a release candidate. I'll do some more testing, and if there's a real issue, I'll log a bug. But basically, here's what I found. So what was happening was that I'm in my Supabase client here. I am providing this Supabase object with the key Supabase so that it can then be injected here in my use Supabase client. So what's happening is that for some reason I'm getting this warning when I try to do inject. So let me take this out and kind of run. I have two Supabases. Hold on. You take this out and see. So that's interesting. So of course now it works fine. Let me try and go to my index page. So this is what I'm getting. My Supabase is not initialized properly when I try to go to my index page first. And what's happening is that, as you can see, I'm getting this warning, injected can only be used inside setup or functional component, which is kind of strange. And then you can see inside of my use Supabase client right here, Supabase is null. But I am injecting it because you see me doing it here. So the other solution that I found is I can also do this. So let me just, I can actually inject it down here. Like I say, vuej nuxt provide. And then what that will do is, if I assign it there, right, now I can go back into my Supabase, into my use Supabase client, and I can do what I'm doing here. So if I uncomment this, and so what will happen is on the actual Nuxt app, there'll be this Supabase object that I had placed in. And so we can confirm that by setting my debugger here. And actually, if we just hover over the app object, you can see as we scroll down here, here's my Supabase client that I injected. It's the same way how you get access to the router and all the other things that get injected. I mean, sorry, that are provided. So I'm just going to use that for now while I kind of figure out why this inject is not working. Because as you can see, as I step over this, I actually am now getting my client, which I wasn't getting before. And so my code should work properly. So you can see now if I attempt to go to my index route, it's going to redirect me back to login because I'm not logged in. And so now if I log in again, actually let me change my router after my login. Where's my login page? So iOS pages, login. So if my login success, the other thing I want to do is I want to go router replace with, just put it back to index. And that will send it to my index page. And then make sure on my logout. So where's my logout? In my index view, it replaces and sends me back to login. And then let's do one last thing, which is on this page. Here we have my Supabase client, and then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to say const user, and we'll extract their user from our Supabase client. So we'll say client dot auth dot user. And then up here, we'll just put it down underneath this. User, and then so that should render my user object. All right, so let's run this. Let's kind of reload it. All right, so let's try to log in. We have our username, we have our password. We sign in. So a user logged into Supabase. Let's get past this breakpoint. And then now you can see here on the page, it's basically dumping out all the user information. So I know that I'm logged in, and then I can sign out. It redirects me back to login page, and then just to let you know that I'm really signed out, I try to go back to my index page, and it's not letting me go. All right, and so then the last thing, once again, is because the whole objective of this is to show it running on device, is we're going to use our trusty Ionic plugin, and we're going to try to deploy this thing to device again. So let's go back to my Ionic plugin, and we're just going to do iOS. Select iOS, it's going to look for my devices. Okay, so here we have our app. Let's try again. And you can see it's successfully logged into Supabase. And here's my user information. You can still kind of move around like we did before, and we can sign out. So that's what we got for this part here, just showing basic authentication with Supabase. Hopefully you found this enjoyable, and we'll chat next time. Keep a lookout for the blog post.